You have no place in this house anymore. I remembered those words for 16 years. Not my husband's voice, not the noise of the harbor, not the cries of traders on Canopic Street. It was my mother-in-law's voice I remembered. Dry, even, as if she were not casting a woman with 2 children into the street, but telling a servant to carry out cold ashes. My name is Taisia. I am 44 now. I have a small shop not far from the Eastern Harbor. I copy invoices for merchants, count grain, and read contracts aloud to those who never learned their letters. People assume that if a woman can keep track of other people's money, her own life must be in order. They do not know that once I did not even have a dry corner where I could lay my children down. 16 years ago, I lived in the house of my mother-in-law, Aurelia. It was a large house, an inner courtyard, a marble threshold, painted walls, and a storeroom lined with amphorae of oil. My husband, Marcus, believed everything there belonged to him by birthright. From the first day, I understood that I was only a guest. Aurelia did not shout. She rarely raised her voice at all. She only looked at me in a way that made me want to wipe my hands on my dress and check whether I had dirtied the very air by standing in it. I was the daughter of a poor copyist. No dowry, no powerful family, no jewels. Marcus married me against her wishes. Beauty passes, she told him once, while I stood right there. Poor relations stay. He laughed then and kissed my temple. I believed love would protect me. It did not. On the night of Saturnalia, Marcus did not come home. We had argued before he left. Not over another woman, not over betrayal. I knew nothing then. We argued about missing money. A small purse of silver Aurelia had set aside for the tax had vanished from the storeroom. She looked at me first. Marcus flared up. He shouted that I had humiliated him in front of his mother, that nothing was ever enough for me, that I had brought poverty and suspicion into his house. Then he slammed the door and went toward the harbor. In the morning, they carried him back on a litter. They said there had been a fight outside a wine shop, a knife, blood on the stones. No one had seen anything. In Alexandria, such things happened. The city was large, the night was loud. A man turns a corner, and the gods decide the rest. I do not remember the funeral. I remember Aurelia's face after it. She came into the room where I was sitting with the children. Livia was 5. Septimius was 3. My son slept across my lap, and my daughter held the edge of my dress. You drove him out of this house with your words, my mother-in-law said. I did not know he would go there. Of course, you never know anything. Men just seem to die around you. I said nothing. I was already saying it to myself. If only I had kept quiet. If only I had not argued. If only I had stopped him at the door. Aurelia walked to the chest, opened it, and began throwing my things onto the floor. Pack. Where am I supposed to go? Back where you came from. The children. She looked at Livia and Septimius as if she was seeing them for the first time. My son is dead. Your poverty is still here. Take it with you. Outside, it was raining. Not the warm, brief rain of summer, winter rain from the sea, cold, sticky, creeping under my cloak, into my hair, into the children's sandals. Livia kept asking, "Mama, are we going back soon?" I carried Septimius and said, "Soon." But we never went back. For 16 years I built a life again. First I washed linen at the baths. Then I copied other people's letters for a copper coin. Then an old accountant near the harbour noticed I could add numbers quickly, and he began giving me work. I studied at night. The children slept while I traced letters on wax tablets until my fingers went numb. I bought my shop myself. It was small, with a crooked door and a roof that leaked the first year. But it was my roof. I did not see Aurelia once in all those years. Then, one day, Chryssa came to me. She had once been enslaved in my mother-in-law's house. Later, Aurelia had freed her. I did not recognize her at first. Her back had bent, her hair had gone grey, and her hands had grown narrow as dry twigs. "Taisia," she said, "the mistress is in a bad way." I did not even ask which mistress. Everything inside me tightened. "She has a younger son," I said. "Let him help her." Chryssa gave a joyless little smile. "Lucius has sold everything he could sell. The house is mortgaged. Twice. The creditors will come in 10 days. That is not my concern. She is nearly blind. She cannot read the contracts. She does not understand what she signed." I kept silent. "You can read accounts," Chryssa went on. "You are the only one who will understand how they trapped her. Why should I save the woman who threw me and my children out into the rain?" Chryssa looked at me for a long time. "You should not have to, but there is no one else." That evening I told my children. Livia rose from the table at once. "No!" She was 21. She assisted a healer at the temple of Serapis and had already seen enough pain not to trust pretty words about family. "Mama, she cast us out. I remember that rain. I remember how you held Septimius all night because we had nowhere to lie down." I remember too. "Then why?" Septimius sat quietly. He barely remembered that night, but he knew it through all the silences we had built around it. "Because," I said slowly, "I want to see the truth with my own eyes." "The truth?" Livia laughed bitterly. "The truth is that she is a cruel woman." "Perhaps, but I have lived for 16 years believing Marcus died because of my quarrel with him. If there is anything more, I have to know." The next day, I went to the old house. It had grown smaller, or perhaps I had stopped being afraid of it. The marble at the threshold was cracked. There was no water in the courtyard pool. On the wall where the family tablets used to hang, dark rectangles remained where the frames had been removed. Aurelia sat by the window. I remembered her as tall, straight-backed, commanding. Now an old woman sat before me, with cloudy eyes and fingers that kept searching for the edge of her coverlet. She heard my footsteps. "Taisia?" I did not answer at once. Too many years stood between us. "Chryssa said you signed a bad contract." I did not call you here for pity. I did not come out of pity. She turned her face away. There were tablets on the table, loan contracts, receipts, accounts. I read all day. Lucius had indeed mortgaged the house twice. The creditor on the second note had no right to force her out if the first lien could be proved. I could help her. I was about to leave when I found an old bundle of tablets in a cedar box. Marcus's name was on the first one. My heart struck so hard that I had to sit down. They were not household accounts. They were debts. Wine, a gambling room near the harbor, gifts for a dancer named Myra, the redemption of a pawned ring, another debt, then another. The last entry had been made the day before he died. Silver delivered to Myra. Marcus promised to come tonight. I stopped breathing. He had not left because of our quarrel, not because of me. He had gone where he had been going for a long time, to a woman I knew nothing about, to debts his mother had been paying for him. I took the tablet and went to Aurelia. She could not see it, but she heard my voice. You knew. The old woman went still. Knew what? About Myra, about the debts, about where he went that night. She was silent so long that I understood everything without an answer. You knew, I said again, and you still told me I had destroyed him. Aurelia covered her face with her hands. I could not bear the shame. The shame, I laughed. It came out low and ugly. Your son drank, gambled, and went to another woman, and I was the shame? He was my son, and my children were his children. I know. No, you knew then, and you threw them out. She lowered her hands. I saw his face in them, and I hated myself because I loved them. Because if I loved them, I would have had to admit what was left of Marcus was not a name, not honor, not the handsome portrait in this house. What was left were the children of the woman I despised. I stood in the middle of the room and felt the breath leave me. The breath I had been holding for 16 years. The guilt I had carried was never mine. It had been placed on my shoulders because that was easier for everyone else. I could have lived a different life, I said quietly. One without that stone inside me. Forgive me. I had waited for those words for years. I had thought that if I ever heard them, something would loosen. Nothing did. I do not know if I can. I do not deserve it. That is true, she nodded, without arguing, and somehow that made it heavier. I left that day, but I took the contracts with me. 3 days later, I stopped the creditors. A week later, the house could no longer be taken without a court hearing. Lucius disappeared, the way people disappear when other people's money runs out. For a long time, Livia could not understand why I had done it. Mama, you could have let her lose her roof. It would have been fair. It would have. Then why? I looked at my hands, at the wax and ink worked into my fingers. Because I do not want our whole lives to keep turning around what she did. Livia went to Aurelia a month later. On her own. No one asked her to. I waited in the courtyard and heard their voices through the wall. At first, they were quiet. Then Livia began to cry. Then Aurelia was crying too. When my daughter came out, she held a small clay fish in her palm. I knew it at once. When Livia was 4, she had shaped that fish for her grandmother. Crooked, funny, with one eye larger than the other. Aurelia had said then, "Take that thing off my table." Now the fish lay inside a silk pouch, whole, kept safe. "She saved it," Livia said, "all these years." "What do you feel?" My daughter wiped her face. "I do not know. Anger, pity, emptiness, everything at once. That is normal. I have not forgiven her. No one is asking you to." A few weeks later, Septimius came too. Awkward, tall, with the hands of a grown man. Aurelia touched his face for a long time because she could barely see. "You look like her," she whispered. "Like my father?" he asked coldly. "No, like your mother." He did not smile, but he stayed and drank an infusion with her. In spring, we carried Aurelia into the courtyard. She sat under the pomegranate tree, wrapped in a light coverlet. Livia brought her a new clay fish. Septimius repaired the shutters. Chryssa grumbled that everyone was getting in the way of her sweeping. I looked at them and thought how strange family is. Sometimes it is broken by the very people who should have protected it. Sometimes it is gathered back together by those who were once pushed out the door. Aurelia called me. "Taisia." I went to her. "I cannot give you back those 16 years. No. And I cannot make Marcus a different man. No, you cannot." She squeezed my hand, weakly, almost weightlessly. "Then why are you here?" I looked at Livia, at Septimius, at the old house that no longer frightened me. "Because I do not want to live inside your lie anymore." She wept without a sound. And for the first time in many years, what I felt was not joy, not forgiveness, not love. It was freedom. Sometimes truth comes too late to give back the past, but it can still arrive in time to keep the past from taking the future.